What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. We've got a double feature for you. We're going to be talking AEW WrestleDream 2024 predictions, and then transitioning over to the Hot Tags of the Week, edition number 671. We'll be talking about all the rumours, news, gossip surrounding the world of professional wrestling. And who are we? Well, I'm your host for this edition, Callum Wiggins, and I'm joined by... no one. Yep, for the first and potentially last time ever, depending on how this goes, I will be flying solo for this edition, with Tony sunning himself over in Brazil and Rob buried under rubble of debris and wind and mess and all this other stuff associated with Hurricane Milton. Don't worry, he's actually fine. He's suffered a little bit of damage to the home, like his roof and bedroom. So if you do want to head over to his Twitter account at DudeFelice, he has set up a Cash App. So if you are feeling particularly charitable and want to support his relief efforts, then you can head on over there to throw him a couple of bits of spare change. Of course, trying to get you to put that money towards the Patreon as well, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, going to be on my own here dealing with these two big topics. I think after about 7-8 years of me doing this, it's about time the training wheels came off. So let's just see how this goes, shall we? So yeah, be gentle with me in the comments. If you do want to leave me some positive comments, that'd be great, because comments help this video get seen, get the algorithm. You can also hit that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and yeah, all that other great stuff. If you want to support us financially, of course, I mentioned Patreon earlier, but you can also support us becoming a member of the YouTube channel if you're watching through there to check all this stuff out. That's a good way of just getting access to Darkcast content and our little additional stuff that we throw out there from time to time. Other ways you can support us, of course, you can head on over to the merchandise area, both on Redbubble and TeePublic, pick up some Smark Out Moment branded merchandise, and yeah, just check out the website and all the other stuff, join the Discord, join the Megamaniacs Facebook group, anything and everything that you could possibly do. All these plugs that Tony is so good at putting together that I'm just going to throw out there because I want to get onto the meat of this topic, meat of this episode. So let's get started then. And I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Tony likes to always save the big topic for the main event, but I want to grab people in immediately. So let's talk AEW WrestleDream 2024. It's an interesting looking show. I think that, as per usual, and I'm like Mr. AEW over here on the Smack Talk podcast, so I'm obviously looking very much forward to it, because to me, AEW pay-per-views really don't miss. I think they've, over the last 5 years of their existence, have delivered the highest standard of pay-per-view quality to just average shows in modern history, or maybe even just history in general. Just as long as I've been a wrestling fan, that's been well over 20 years at this point. So I'm super excited for this show, but I will concede, even with my AEW hat on and all that other, the AEW cape, the shirt they come with, they give you when you become a qualified shill of the company. I don't think the build for this particular show has been the most coherent or well put together thing that AEW have ever put together. I think it's been a little bit sloppy in places, a bit rushed, which I think is quite surprising, because they managed to build All In and All Out, which were only 2 weeks apart, and seem to build both those shows quite coherently and make them feel quite structured. Now they've had this kind of 4-week gap leading into WrestleDream. It's actually been a little bit more uneven in places. Like the stuff at the top of the card looks quite good. The stuff in the middle and stuff at the bottom of the card is stuff that's a little bit more, I can take or leave. These are things that could be happening on an episode of Dynamite or an episode of Collision, but we're going to see them at the pay-per-view instead. And I'd say I'm still looking forward to the show. I think the vast majority of the stuff is going to be exciting, and I hope that you would find it exciting as well if you check it out. But, let's say, it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag when I come through this. So let's start at the beginning with what's been announced currently for 0 Hour. Only one match so far has been confirmed for 0 Hour, but I kind of hope that at least one, if not two, of the matches they've also laid out on the main card will also end up transitioning over to there. So let's start with the match that is confirmed, which is a Ring of Honor World Television Championship match pitting the current champion Atlantis Jr. against Brian Cage. So I think that, well, first of all, I want to preface this as well with all this Hurricane Milton stuff going on, and obviously my deepest sympathies for Rob and everyone else that's been caught up in that melee. I'm kind of interested to see how that potentially affects travel to WrestleDream, because Atlantis Jr., representative of CMLL in the partnership with AEW, he would be based in Mexico, and there has been some difficulty getting people travelling to and from that place because Tony Storm, who has been on like a excursion overseas right now, recently appeared in Stardom and was meant to appear at CMLL this week, but has been unable to get there due to travel difficulties, which means that her first appearance or her next appearance in CMLL will be postponed to a later date. So hopefully Atlantis Jr. can get over to the show in Washington. But I think that let's go with the case that ends up happening. Let's say I don't think that this is going to be the most exciting match for people that aren't following Ring of Honor. I'm probably one of the dozen or so people that is watching Ring of Honor TV on a regular basis. And even then, like, you wouldn't have seen much of Atlantis Jr. anyway, because he hasn't appeared on a show for the last month or so at all. So I think that just from a perspective of wanting to see the Ring of Honor TV Championship on television or on the Ring of Honor On Demand stuff, I would like to see Brian Cage win the title. And I think I'd like to see Brian Cage win the title just because of how well he's performed so far this year. Like, I've always been like the kind of guy on the show that's been a little bit more either harsh or critical of Brian Cage, because even though I think that he is a fun wrestler and has obviously a great look to him, I think that he's always lacked that emotional attachment and that just presence beyond the in-ring side of things, obviously the look and the in-ring side of things. So I think that even though what he does is impressive and he definitely looks impressive, I think that it was just lacking that emotional connection. But I think what he's done in the last couple of years has actually been really good in the sense that he's clearly a jobber to the stars type. He's a big enhancement talent that can go in and have a really good match with a top level guy, a Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland, Bryan Danielson, that kind of person. But then he could also do like the super fun squash matches with the jobbers as well. So I kind of like accepted that that's his place, and there's probably not going to be too much evolution beyond that point. But it's a fun place to be in with the right person. I think that Cage is the right person to be doing that. So I would like to see him win the title from Atlantis Jr. I'm still not super, haven't seen a huge amount of Atlantis Jr. I don't watch CMLL every week. The only matches that I've really seen of him have been the stuff that he has done with Ring of Honor, and, he's good. Like, there's good stuff to him. And I'm sure they'll have a fun match. I'm sure they'll throw in some lucha elements to it, because Brian Cage, like, a former alumni of Lucha Underground and has done some cool stuff. He does like to do some flips and Hurricane Ranas in there when he has the opportunity to do so. So I'm sure he'll bust a few of them out here, given the opportunity. But yeah, I'd like to see him win some singles gold. Like, the last thing that he held was the Ring of Honor 6-man tag team championship, so it'd be good to see him actually get some single gold around the race. I don't think he's held a singles title in AEW or Ring of Honor, unless you obviously count the FTW championship, which he was the first person to be awarded. So, I think it'd be a nice little, I guess the equivalent of a gold watch for him, even though it's a silver mid-card title for your secondary promotion. But, beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. So that is the match that is confirmed for the 0 hour, but then we should move on to two matches that I think will end up transitioning over into the 0 hour. The first of that being MXN Collection, Mansoor and Mason Madden against the Acclaimed. Yes, I don't think this should be on pay-per-view. Like, I certainly wouldn't be paying for this match to be on there. I think that they haven't exactly had the most exciting feud. The Acclaimed are a bit stale. I was hoping that they'd get like a big revitalising push after doing pretty well in that Blood and Guts match. And, then appearing at Allin in the like the three-way tag match with the Bucks and FTR, and I was in the crowd for that, and I could tell that they're still over. They're still pretty over as an act. But I just think that their overall packaging and their overall just vibe surrounding them at the moment is pretty lackluster. They need a bit of a change of direction. They certainly need to separate themselves away from Billy Gunn. Like, having the daddy ass thing, that got them super over for a time, but right now it just feels like the joke's worn thin. Like, there's only so much leg room you can have with it. Entertainment Collection, I think they're a fun act. I think that they are good to be like, that sort of like good enhancement level tag team. But that's just the thing is like this match is going to be between a decent heel act enhancement level tag team against a pretty stale like upper echelon tag team. So I just don't feel like there's much going for this one. I don't think the feud has been particularly interesting. It's been mainly contained on Collision and Rampage. So yeah, I think that if it was up to me, I'd have MXN Collection win just because it's a bit more interesting and they're the newer team on the block, so they could probably end up doing a few bits and pieces. Whereas the Acclaimed probably need a loss to help spark something. I at this point, I kind of want them to lose and then the Acclaimed. I'm not saying I need the Acclaimed to break up, but they need a change of direction, whether that's turning heel, whether that's just a new coat of paint, whether that is just separating from Daddy Ass. They need something to properly have a sustainable revitalization. It can't just be fits and spurts. So my prediction would be have MXN Collection win. Or at least that's what I'd want to do. Maybe that's not what I expect to happen, but I'm going to go with what I would like to happen as my prediction. The other one is a match that I am very much looking forward to, Hologram versus the Beast Mortos. This, I think, is just, there's not a huge amount of story going into this. The thing that's, like, leading into this match was an event that happened on the Title Tuesday Dynamite, where you had Hologram versus Commander. They had a fun match. Hologram got a win. He's yet to be defeated yet, and they kind of showed respect, and then they were all attacked from behind by the newly formed LFI under Jake Roberts' leadership of all things. We'll talk about that when we get a little bit more into the actual events of Title Tuesday later on. But yeah, it's just a case of two guys that have been putting banger matches on TV over and over and over again, just getting a chance to showcase that on pay-per-view. In a 2 out of 3 falls match, very lucha. So yeah, I think that these two have been excellent throughout the last few months. I think Hologram has been doing some really good work on Collision. That was only his first match on Dynamite this past week, but he's been a fun act. I think he's getting over really well. I think he's very dynamic. He's definitely in the upper tier of the growing collective of luchadors that they have over in AEW. The Beast Mortos, on the other hand, he's just like one of the perfect bases for a guy like Hologram to do like his cool stuff. But then the Beast Mortos couldn't even do his own plunches and dives and power moves. Like, he's such an impressive specimen. And so I think that this will be a lot of fun. I think this will be the first time we see Hologram get pinned. I still think they see a lot in Hologram, and they still are reluctant to push Mortos as like the super big deal, because LFI's leadership is under Roosh, so he's like the golden star of that act. Whereas the Beast Mortos is more of a bouncer, more of a bodyguard, more of a guy that can throw people around but would eat the pin if in 6-man tags or trios matches, him and Dralistico. So I think that there's still a reluctance to like fully run with Mortos, whereas I don't think there's that same kind of barricade is preventing Hologram. So I think that Hologram will win this, but it will be for 2 falls to 1. So yeah, I think I'll go with that one there. And apologies, I will be taking slight breaks every here and again to just get a drink. That's usually the good time when Tony and Rob can start talking. I can usually just like pause for a second, take a few little sips, and let them carry the load. But yeah, I'm surprised that Tony manages to do this without any sort of breaks. I definitely don't envy him for that. I don't think he would envy anyone in that situation either. Let's move on to there's 2 other non-title matches on the show, so we'll cover those now. First up being Hangman Adam Page versus Jay White. Very interesting, this one, in terms of how they decide to go about the actual result. Because Jay White's only recently returned, he's now kind of firmly in the babyface territory. Hangman Page very much a heel, very much still the deranged guy that just beat Swerve Strickland in the main event of All Out. Talk about Swerve a little bit later on. And then I think that, but it's an interesting situation of, I'm really looking forward to this match because it's two of their really, like, top tier wrestlers that, you know, people put a lot of stock into. I know Jay White has never been pushed to the level that many people would have expected once he signed for AEW, but he's still obviously a tier talent. And Hangman Page is right now he's the antagonist of AEW, but he's the protagonist of just AEW's journey. I say this, and I'm sure many people agree, that the story of AEW coincides with the story of Hangman Adam Page. So they're two guys that they wouldn't necessarily want to beat, especially with Jay White just coming back and Page still in the throes of a feud with Swerve, still dealing with a lot of stuff right now. Still, I think, on a journey to soon reclaim the World Championship. And when I say soon, I don't mean maybe, like, it's not going to be next week, but maybe in the next year or so. So I don't know where you go in terms of who wins this one. It might be quite interesting because they haven't exactly, like, protected Adam Page in terms of he can't take losses. Like, he's taken several losses since his return. He lost to Bryan Danielson in the tournament. He's lost a couple of other times as well, just due to getting in his own head and letting his own frustrations take over. So it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world to have Jay White get the victory, taking advantage of that because Jay White is such a cerebral and intelligent performer. But I think that, like, I think they'll likely go with Adam Page and then you can build Jay White back up afterwards. I mean, it depends on what their overall plan for this. If they expect this to be like a bit more of a few week or month long feud, then maybe they have Jay White win the first one and Adam Page gets the victory long term. But yeah, it's one of the ones that's more difficult to predict, and I think I'm going to go with Adam Page just because I feel like there's just more meat to him as a character and his story right now. But I'm super looking forward to what they managed to put together in the match. That's for certain. And the other non-title match is Darby Allin versus Brody King. So this was set up a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, Darby Allin lost his title opportunity that he won at the Royal Rampage to take on the world champion. Lost that to Jon Moxley. We'll talk about that in the main event. But yeah, so he lost that. Then set up an open challenge for anyone to face him at WrestleDream, and that challenge was answered by kind of his biggest recent rival outside of guys like Christian Cage and people like that. But Brody King has been a consistent foe of Darby Allin. Like, they've met each other and fought each other multiple times. Brody King has often gotten the upper hand against Darby Allin using his size and power. I think this will be really fun. Like, both these guys are from the Seattle area, from that state. The Washington State area, so I think that they'll have a really good match. I think Brody King will throw him around. Darby Allin will throw his body towards Brody King and try and do as much damage as possible. And I think that you should have Darby Allin win. I think there should still be an arc of redemption for Darby Allin that eventually ends with him winning the World Championship. I know I said, Hangman Page wins the title as well, but I think that Darby Allin would be a perfect guy for Page to win the title from, because he's such, like, you know, the underdog, beating heart of AEW. Like, he's like the spirit and soul of AEW, Darby Allin. So him winning the title and then that getting snatched away from him from the vindictive, evil iteration of Adam Page feels like a really good direction to go. So I think that in order for that to happen, you need to give Darby his big win, especially after that difficult loss to Jon Moxley. I think he needs to start racking up wins and start pushing himself forward. And beating Brody King is a good way of doing that, because Brody King is a guy that I think the crowd see as a threat, even though he's never won anything significant as a singles. So, but, you know, they'll have an impressive match, and that'll be a great way to get Darby Allin further over in this story. So yeah, I'd say Darby Allin wins. before we move on to the title matches, I think we should also say that what's been advertised on this show is Swerve Strickland is going to return. So he's been away ever since All Out, so wondering if he'll address that and everything else. But I guess the bigger story surrounding it is that there's been machinations behind the scenes of MVP coming into the company, basically calling out Prince Nana, saying that his management of Swerve Strickland has made Swerve go soft, or that Nana's in it for himself and his dance and getting himself over off Swerve's expense. And so MVP is trying to recruit him to this new iteration of the Hurt Business, or whatever they're going to end up referring to it as. I think that you have, obviously, you got MVP and you've got Shelton Benjamin, and you can only assume that Bobby Lashley's on the way, and I would probably presume that this segment is to lead to the debut or the arrival of Lashley. Apparently, like, rumours were circulating prior to this that what was originally intended for the show was to be the actual match between Swerve and Bobby Lashley. The plans have obviously changed. They're going to have Swerve just come out, have a segment, cut a promo in front of the crowd. I'm sure there'll be a place to see him. He's from the area and he's been away for a little while, so I'm sure that will lead to a very good reaction. And then Bobby Lashley will come out, beat him up a bit, beat up him, maybe up Nana as well, stand with this new iteration of the Hurt Business, and then they can move forward. And especially I think it's interesting with the timing of Powerhouse Hobbs being fit to compete soon. I think that he might be a good addition to that group as well, especially now if we're seeing like trades between managers. Again, we'll talk about that when we get to Dynamite. But yeah, I think that's just the obvious place to go. So it's predictable, but you know, it's an interesting new addition to the roster, and I'm sure it will lead to some really good matches between them. Right, let's move into the title side of things, starting with the match that I'm least looking forward to on the whole card, outside of MXM versus the Acclaimed, which is Mark Briscoe versus Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Yeah, Jericho's just very Merico right now, I guess is the best way of putting it. He's just very mid at the moment. Like, a lot of the segments are falling flat. Obviously, there is a very vocal contingent of fans that just want to see the back of him because he's just been around for so long and he feels quite stale, and there's obviously a lot of stuff outside of his in-ring or promo stuff surrounding him that people don't connect with at all. And everyone loves Mark Briscoe, and I'm sure that he'll bring his A game. I think that everyone's also caught up about how this was the feud they decided to bring out Jay Briscoe and evoke his memory, and I think that's led to like Mark, like the promo that he cut on Dynamite, showing a really serious side to him, saying that like he's going to hurt Jericho. I think that was really cool, but I don't think anyone really wants to see Jericho win the Ring of Honor World Championship. And I know when we speculated or talked about this beforehand, mentioned the fact that like if Ring of Honor is getting some kind of television deal out of all of these new things that are going on, that I think that having Jericho as the centerpiece of that could benefit negotiations. But then again, he was the Ring of Honor World Champion before, and that didn't seem to do much for it because Ring of Honor is still very much on demand right now. So definitely not in demand, but it's on demand. And so yeah, I would go with Mark Briscoe retaining. I think that unless you have this long character arc or story between these two planned out, and I really wouldn't want to see like a 3-month long feud between Chris Jericho and Mark Briscoe over the World Championship. We already saw that with Claudio and Jericho like a couple of years back, so I don't want to have like diminishing returns off of this. And I don't think that like this is the one that's going to be the big like captivating like exciting thing that's Briscoe. Like this will be the big feud that defines Briscoe's reign as world champion. Or at least I would hope not. So I'm going to go with Briscoe retaining, but you know it's Jericho, so you never know at this point. Then we have AEW TNT Championship. Jack Perry defending against Katsuyori Shibata. This one probably feels like it has like the least amount of story or kind of meat behind it. Like, you know, Jack Perry just was challenged by Shibata and he accepted, like, beat him up behind the scenes, and there's been kind of promos ever since, but there hasn't really been much sort of development. Don't get me wrong, the match would be great because Jack Perry always like over delivers on pay-per-view, and Katsuyori Shibata's just great, so I'm sure they'll have a fun match, but there isn't much to say about it because Perry's obviously going to retain. They're not putting the TNT title on Shibata. So yeah, it's just you know, a fun enough match to put on a card, but it definitely feels like it has more of a, like, this maybe better save for a Dynamite or Collision rather than slotting in on pay-per-view, but we'll see. See how it goes. Then we have the AEW Tag Team Championships, the Young Bucks versus Private Party. Again, I think that this hasn't been booked particularly well. I think that they're leaning way too heavily on the match from 5 years ago where Private Party shocked the Young Bucks in the inaugural Tag Team Championship tournament, and kind of just leaning into that as like, that's the thing that's giving Private Party hope on this. And it's like look at recent history. I mean, there's plenty of people that are probably watching AEW now that didn't see that 5 years ago. Like, you have to lean into what have you done for me lately? What Private Party have done for us lately is get their ass handed to them by the Blackpool Combat Club or the remnants of the Blackpool Combat Club. And yeah, they've won a couple of matches to help like win some number one contendership, but you know, you could they throw everybody into these number one contenders matches. Like as much as I'm a big fan of Emi Sakura, she like went and challenged Mercedes Moné for the TBS Championship on TV, and she's only ever won one match on Dynamite. So they give title match opportunities to pretty much everybody. They're, especially now that the rankings are pretty much dead and buried and never going to come back. So yeah, they can do this sort of thing, but it doesn't help the championship prestige. It doesn't help excitement levels for the match. I'm sure they'll have a good match. The Young Bucks have actually had some really good matches recently. After being a little bit underwhelming in the middle part of the year, they've stepped it back up again, back to the level they were when they had that awesome match with Sting and Darby Allin earlier this year at Revolution. Their match with Ospreay and Fletcher recently on Dynamite was a lot of fun, and some good six-man tags as well. So I'm sure they'll go out to try and make Private Party look as good as possible in this. I'm sure Private Party will hold up their end of the bargain as well. But again, I think it's pretty obvious the Young Bucks. I say it's obvious that the Young Bucks will win and retain the championships unless they decide to go with like just a massive shock factor thing. And I'm sure they'll try and recreate the same sequence that Private Party used to defeat them the first time around, just as a callback to that. But I think that would just be, you know, switching the titles for the sake of switching them and trying to like create a little like exciting moment straight away without any real plan of a follow through for it. So I think you have to keep it on the Young Bucks for now and wait until there's a more credible, captivating team that's there to win the title, or at least that's had a bit more of a built-up story over recent times to make it worthwhile seeing. AEW International Championship. Probably just from an in-ring standpoint, the match that I and many other people are looking most forward to, as Will Ospreay defends in a triple threat match against Ricochet and Konosuke Takeshita. I mean, these are three ultra exciting competitors. I think that Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world right now, and I'd say Takeshita is top 5 best wrestlers in the world right now. This iteration, Ricochet, the jury's still out a little bit. I think he's doing some really cool stuff. Obviously, the match that he had with Will Ospreay a couple of weeks ago had some really, really good stuff in it, and I think they'll probably try and up the ante now that Takeshita's involved as well. But, you know, we'll see where his trajectory is going. And I think that this one's quite difficult to predict as well, because having the 3 men involved means that Ospreay doesn't necessarily have to be involved in the decision. So he could lose it based on like Takeshita pinning Ricochet, or vice versa, and it helps protect him, keep him looking somewhat strong. The interesting dynamic is what role does the Don Callis family play on this, which I kind of don't like as a story beat for this, because I just want to see these three awesome wrestlers have an awesome match with a clean finish at the end of it. But you know that because of the triple threat side of things and no disqualification aspect of it, you know that Don Callis and potentially Kyle Fletcher and their new acquisition, Lance Archer, is probably going to get involved to try and help Takeshita get the victory. Whereas I don't really want to see that. I just want to see these three guys tear it up. But, yeah, I would personally, just for me, I think it's time that we strap up Takeshita in some way or another. I think that he has been like a stalwart member of the roster and has done such sterling work in the ring. It's time to reward that by giving him some gold. Don't get me wrong, I'd be totally fine if the title stayed with Ospreay or Ricochet won it, because these guys are great as well, but I really, really, really am pulling for Takeshita to get his first piece of gold for AEW. So yeah, I'm gonna back my boy Takeshita get the victory. And yeah, I'll end that one there. Moving on to the AEW Women's World Championship match. Mariah May versus Willow Nightingale. Not a stellar build for this one. I think that it's quite obvious that Willow Nightingale was going for it, but I still keep coming back to, and this weird stuff with Chris Statlander no longer being with Stoke Hathaway. Again, we'll talk about that in a little while, but just the overall thing of Willow Nightingale losing that big match All Out, but then she's the one that's pushed forward for the AEW Women's World title match. Don't really like that. Love Willow Nightingale though, and I think that she'll have a great match with Mariah May. Well, I think she'll have a pretty good match with Mariah May. I've not been super impressed with Mariah May as AEW Women's World Champion. I think that she's been a bit, on her training wheels as a top heel. I think she's probably been pushed too soon into this position, which is a shame because the whole story building up to it with Toni Storm was really well executed. But I think pretty much from the moment she turned on Toni Storm, it's all kind of been a bit mid-level, like wheels come off a little bit for Mariah May. I just don't think she's carried forward that momentum in the right way, and so I would be totally happy for her to lose the championship here and push Willow Nightingale as like your top face of the women's division, as I think she should be at this point. I think that's probably unlikely because I think Toni Storm is still coming back. I think there's still unfinished business between her and Mariah May that will need to be resolved. So I think that this is going to be like Willow comes super close, and you're just going to need to wait a little bit longer in the same way with like Adam Page. Like, you had to wait a couple of years before he finally got his moment. I think you're going to have to wait, hopefully not that long, but you probably have to wait a few months, maybe a year, for Willow Nightingale to come back around and get this title around her waist. I think you're just going to have to be a case of just keeping the people a little bit hungry, build up that anticipation for her to finally win it, rather than just like her just winning it straight away, which would feel a bit out of the blue in this situation. Again, up to me, just give her the title and strap the rocket to her. But I think that they're unlikely to make such a drastic move under such a short build. And yeah, then we'll just move on to what the main event is, which is Bryan Danielson defending the AEW World Championship and his full-time wrestling career against Jon Moxley. Yeah, this is definitely really tough to predict because I think most people would probably say that neither man should really be losing this one. Because Jon Moxley's just come back, he's got this new edgier persona to him where he seems to be controlled by a higher power, whether that is like a real person that's dictating things, whether it's just like something in his own head about what the way wrestling should be or how it should be portrayed. But he's now got this crew around him with Pac and Claudio and Marina Shafir, and they've cast Wheeler Yuta aside, and obviously Danielson as well. So that's a really good new, like, just style and just persona behind Jon Moxley now that's most interesting his character's been in a good number of years. But at the same time, like, it doesn't feel like they've done enough to present the fact this is Bryan Danielson's potentially last match. Like, I don't think the stuff they've done on TV have really made people consider the possibility that if he loses this match, he's gone and he's going to be, he'll be back on like a semi-permanent basis, but like he won't be on week-to-week TV anymore. And it just doesn't feel like it's the right moment. They haven't made me expect it, or even like just feel like, oh, this is it, and I should be watching this because like super intently because this might be the last time that I ever see him wrestle. So I don't feel that sort of urge. It just doesn't feel right. And so that's why, against maybe better judgment, that I think I'm going to go with Danielson retaining. And yeah, it just feels like neither guy should lose this match. It doesn't feel like it's the right time for the Danielson run to end. He's only held the title for just over a month or so since All Out. And it feels like they could pull it out to at least World's End and have that big crescendo at the end of it. But also it's like, how do you have Moxley lose in a way which doesn't derail his momentum? I think the only way of redoing that is having some involvement from Wheeler Yuta. So I think that having a story between Yuta and Moxley is like the young kid that's been past side, who's consistently been routinely beaten like a drum by Moxley in their previous matches prior to him joining the Blackpool Combat Club. Just to him to eventually being able to build himself up to finally defeat Jon Moxley. And I don't think that they're going to put the AEW World title on Yuta, so having Moxley not be champion and have Yuta eventually win it after like a couple month-long feud with the remains of this Blackpool Combat Club would be a great way of pushing him to the next level, and then him as like, okay, he's beaten Jon Moxley, he's somebody who's going to be a top guy for our future. So I would personally like to see Danielson retain, just because I just don't think this journey should be over just yet. But in the same token, I would not be surprised if like they really want to stamp approval on this is Moxley. Moxley's like the most winningest AEW World Champion of all time anyway, pretty much. So having him win the title again under this new persona and be like top guy moving forward, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. I just don't want Danielson to go just yet. So I'm gonna put my heart first and say that Danielson retains. And there we go. That's the WrestleDream prediction. So if that's the only thing that you were particularly interested in, you could. I would appreciate it if you continued listening, but you could cut away now if you so wish before we talk into the rest of the hot tags. So we'll switch on over now onto Hot Tags 671. Let's talk some rumours, news and gossip and results. And I guess just because we ended on WrestleDream now, let's just bounce around a little bit. Let's talk with TV for AEW side of things. Let's talk about Title Tuesday, and then we'll move on to other TV talk with the WWE side of things later on, because God knows how I'm going to navigate my way through that, considering how little I watch of WWE TV these days. But we'll talk about Title Tuesday, because I definitely watched that. And so what happened on this show? A few big things worth notifying. I think it was a little bit of a weird mismatched show with there were reports of like the travel difficulties getting in because of all the Hurricane Milton stuff, so had to change things on the fly. So it was a little bit disjointed. They had the AEW Women's Championship number one contenders match, which Willow Nightingale won to earn her opportunity against Mariah May, defeating Saraya, Nyla Rose, and Jamie Hayter. Originally, this was supposed to just be a singles match between Willow Nightingale and Britt Baker, but Britt Baker was suffering from strep throat, so she didn't travel to the venue. So they threw together this four-way match instead, which I thought was plenty of fun. They kind of just, it was kind of really like a 1 versus 1 versus 1 versus 2 match, because Harley Cameron was just getting involved all the time to help Saraya. And another interesting match is that Penelope Ford made her long-awaited return. I think it's been about at least a year, if not even close to 2, since we saw her in the ring, and she took out Jamie Hayter, so that's going to lead to a program between those two, you have to imagine. So, decent enough match. Had like Hologram versus Commander that you mentioned before, which is fun. You had Mercedes Moné that defended both her TBS Championship and her New Japan Strong Women's Championship against Ami Sakura in a I feel it was a fun match. It's definitely one of the upper echelon ones that Mercedes has had since joining AEW, but the result was never in doubt, so there wasn't a huge amount of jeopardy to it. I guess the bigger picture off of the back of that, besides the match itself being good, was the continued transition of Chris Statlander into a babyface role without Stokely Hathaway by her side. Stokely Hathaway actually appeared later on the show to try and procure the services of Private Party, which they rejected, so he's now on the hunt, obviously, for new people to manage. But, yeah, Statlander is basically turning babyface. I assume she's going to have a match with Camille in the near future. I guess that's one of the things that I didn't really mention about the WrestleDream side of stuff that I'll probably bring out here. There's very, very, little women's wrestling on that show, which, is a bad thing. I think that AEW have been so much better with presenting their women's division as a big deal and having multiple stories and segments attached to them. So to have only one women's match announced for the card, I'm recording this today on the Friday, the show's tomorrow, and they haven't announced any other women's match, when you could do Jamie Hayter versus Penelope Ford off the back of this. You could do Queen Aminata and Serena Deeb, or do something with Deonna Purrazzo's new faction that she's putting together, or something that's, there's plenty of stories and plenty of opportunities around there. To only have Mariah May versus Willow Nightingale as your sole representative is not, it looks bad on you as a company, and it's also just not reflective on the stories that you've got bubbling in the women's division right now. So yeah, I'd hope to see that be addressed. But even now, it feels like it's just going to be a last minute addition that no one's really going to care about, which is not the way to go about things. Then some other weird stuff. So there was some manager trades based on something that happened at the end of, or towards the middle back end of Collision last week. Don Callis secured the services of Lance Archer from Jake the Snake Roberts, who appeared on TV for the first time in quite a while. And it was later revealed that that trade saw Roosh, who was even then just so loosely connected to Don Callis' family in the last couple of weeks anyway. So apparently now Jake Roberts is the manager of the LFI stable, with Roosh and Beast Mortos, who's also being courted by Roderick Strong and the Undisputed Kingdom and Drilistico there. It's it doesn't feel like the most natural pairing in the world, but I guess we'll see how that goes. You had Brody King and Darby Allin face off. Jay White had a match against a jobber, and then you have the tag team title, the tag team match at the end. So tag team titles, but there were many champions involved, with Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta defeating Puck and Claudio. So that was something, and they had the brawl at the end of it. But I guess the biggest story off of this show was the re-signing of Daniel Garcia to an AEW contract. I think that was it's to be expected, but it was a big story going around, and it did feel at certain points that it could have gone either way, that he could have ended up in NXT, or he could have stayed with AEW. But it's good to hear that he's signed on the dotted line, supposedly, and he's going to be with AEW for a while moving forward. I think this is probably the most important signing that AEW could have made at this moment in time, beyond any free agent they could have brought on, or bring in anybody outside of the top echelon people from WWE. I think that having somebody like Daniel Garcia be a young upstart who's going to grow and mould himself within the company, as he has done already for the last few years, but to have that kind of homegrown star talent that you can really, really see moving up the card really soon, I think that is so important for the perception of AEW. If you were to lose a guy like Daniel Garcia to the competition, he was to end up going to NXT or the main roster of WWE, I think that really presents you in a bad light, and the AEW at the moment is already very much losing the perception war. In the sense WWE is so hot right now, they've got brilliant attendance figures, and AEW's attendance is pretty much in the toilet, despite the big new TV deal they've got. So if they were to have lost Garcia, I think that would just shave them as this is the definitive B promotion. As I say, they're definitely they're not at the same level of WWE, and no one expects them to be in 5 years into their existence, but I think that the more that you lose that young, exciting talent that has so much potential, that's more damaging in the long run to losing a guy like a Chris Jericho or a Bryan Danielson or even a Jon Moxley back to WWE. Obviously, none of those things are likely to happen outside of Jericho, and hopefully Jericho. But I think that's more damaging to your perception in the long term than having some of your top older names, go back to the competition instead. So them re-signing him is a big coup, and hopefully he got a big check off the back of that, and yeah, so hopefully they end up pushing him and start trying to fulfill some of that potential that we mentioned. So instead, from that point, let's talk about some other signings as well, before we move on to a few other bits and pieces, because there's been quite a few things which have involved contracts right now. Rhea Ripley has apparently agreed a bumper 5-year deal to re-sign with WWE. Apparently this is going to come with a significant pay increase as well. I mean, this is a no-brainer for WWE. Rhea Ripley is the most over female wrestler and one of their most over wrestlers, period, in the company. Everything that she does is bought hook, line, and sinker by their fans. She's part of the big story with Dom and Liv right now. So they would be stupid not to tie her down long term, especially just as she deserves the pay increase regardless of that for probably all the business she moves and the merch she sells. And I don't think there's really much else to say other than, if you have somebody of the star power that Rhea Ripley currently possesses, you have to give them the money and get them to stick around. So I don't think there was ever any risk of Rhea Ripley going anywhere. I don't think there was ever any of those sort of talks about her contract even expiring anytime soon, or her potentially putting out feelers towards AEW or anything like that. I think it was obvious that she was going to stay in WWE, so it's good that they've agreed it pretty early on without having to even put any risk of it going into negotiations or free agency. So good for them. I'm sure she got a deal that she was very, very happy with. On the flip side, so that's a current star. Let's talk about some stars from the past. With Jesse Ventura, Rob Van Dam, and DDP signing WWE Legends deals. Obviously, this will just be one-off appearances. I don't expect any of these guys to be getting in, lacing them up and getting in the ring anytime soon. We knew about Jesse Ventura doing stuff with WWE in the recent current times, so that's not surprising that he signed a deal. DDP signing a Legend deal also makes sense. He's been very much attached to Cody's stuff in the past, so him being there, he's a Hall of Famer and all this other stuff, so I think that it's very, very much aligned with the fact that he'd be signing that sort of deal. The Rob Van Dam one is probably the most interesting because Rob Van Dam, even as early as earlier this year, was wrestling with AEW. So the fact that he signed this Legend deal means that almost certainly won't be able to appear in any sort of AEW event or moving forward. So probably means that he's maybe not calling time on his wrestling career entirely. Maybe he'll still do some stuff in the independents, but he's very much winding himself down now. Won't be showing up in AEW anytime soon. And the Legends deals, they're kind of just there for occasional appearances, stuff to do with appearing in the video games, all of that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really mean a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, but it does obviously tie these guys to WWE and not being able to appear in any promotion that they wouldn't be happy with. So yeah, that's just a few other bits and pieces there. So a few other little things before we move on to some of the bigger stuff. Kurt Angle has revealed that there is a movie being made about his Olympics career. So that whole story about the broken medal, broken medal, gold medal with the broken freaking neck, not the broken medal with the golden freaking neck, gonna be taking place. This is where you really probably would prefer Tony to be hosting, because he could probably rattle off one or two names off the top of his head about guys that could really pull off playing a Kurt Angle in this sort of movie. I don't have a Scooby-Doo who is this young guy that can play a prematurely balding guy with a broken neck, muscle-bound guy with a broken neck on the in the movie. But yeah, I guess it'd be quite interesting. I guess they're focusing on the Olympic side of things, because that story is pretty remarkable. It's definitely one that's worth probably making a movie around, and Kurt Angle's own journey in the Olympics is like a pretty remarkable one in itself. Like losing his, I think he lost like his coach very early on, and so the gold medal win was in tribute to the death of his coach, and so I'm sure they'll weave a lot of that stuff into it as well. But yeah, I'll see how they manage to put something together. I mean, I'm always down for one that's going to have a wrestling story that's going to have a bit of motion to it. You kind of hope that it's more Iron Claw and less fighting with my family, but we'll see how it ends up going. It depends on how they decide to present it. But, you know, big fan of Kurt Angle, favourite wrestler of all time, so if the movie does come out anytime soon and I hear half-decent things about it, be sure to check it out. Why not? And then the last kind of news-related hot tag before I get into TV talk and one more set of pay-per-view predictions is the story that came out quite early this week about Janelle Grant and obviously her ongoing lawsuit against Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis and WWE. So Janelle Grant's attorney sent out a letter requesting WWE to release any other past or current employees that might currently be under an NDA. Basically release them from the NDA in order so that they have the opportunity to speak out about things that they have experienced either at the hands of Vince McMahon or any other people within the company. Essentially, I guess, trying to bait WWE into breaking ties with McMahon altogether, and also to try and wipe the slate clean over everything that they've done, or over everything that has happened in the past. Basically to try and put their money where their mouth is, where they say that Vince is no longer part of the company anymore, we don't have any kind of association with him, so we have no issue like revealing this stuff or letting people who might have previously been under an NDA allow them to speak their truth if they so wish to do so. Now, obviously, this isn't going to happen. I don't imagine in any scenario whatsoever WWE allowing people to go to be let off from any pre-existing NDAs for a multitude of reasons. First of all being that I know a lot of people struggle with this idea that like Janelle Grant's lawsuit is only against Vince McMahon. Like, it is not. It is against Vince, it's against John, it's against John Laurinaitis, it's against WWE as a whole. Vince is the ringleader and the central focus of the lawsuit, but it is against WWE as an entire entity because they, well, by all accounts, executives, allegedly, throw the allegedlys out there just to keep myself safe, but that other people within the company knew of what was happening between Vince McMahon and Janelle Grant and didn't speak up about it or do anything to prevent it. So I guess by issuing this thing, it try and puts them in a stronger, I guess, PR position at the very least, in saying that they've issued this thing and it's now just the ball's in WWE's court to say, like, if they are going to let these people who might or might not be under NDAs release them from it so they can basically be free to say whatever they wish about the situation. But I think it's just a case of there might be so many other people implicated that we are not aware of, that having any NDAs come out could implicate so many other people. That's just my speculation. Like, there might be a case of, if they did release them for NDAs, they'd only be attached to Vince McMahon, and that would only be trying to add more weight to the case against Vince, but I doubt that's going to be the case, and maybe that's just my cynical mind at work, but that's just what I would expect to happen. So I don't expect much to come of this, other than, I think it's worth pointing out the progression of the story, because I feel like there is, I don't say a concerted effort, but I think that this whole Janelle Grant lawsuit does get swept under the rug a little bit by the more exciting, bombastic wrestling news. Like, people want to hear about what's happening on TV, or what's happening on, what's happening with, new signings, or TV deals, or ratings, or all this other stuff. All that other discourse and conjecture kind of covers over the Janelle Grant thing, which is obviously a lot of legalese. It's boring. It's not exactly glamorous. Like, outside of just the general idea of Vince McMahon getting sued and all the stuff that's come out about it, it's not the sexiest topic, and it goes on for a really long time, so naturally people get fatigued by it. I don't understand the news cycle moves super quickly, but I think it's important every now and again to just bring it back to surface when there's a big new development such as this. So I want to make sure that it's brought up and given some element of attention. So that's just the latest update on the potential lawsuit and stuff that's going on there. So before we get to the remainder of the TV talk, I think we should talk about the other big show outside of WrestleDream that's going to be happening, not technically at the weekend, but close enough to the weekend to make it worthwhile. Taking place on Monday the 14th of October in Tokyo, Japan. It is New Japan Pro Wrestling, King of Pro Wrestling. This is going to be a pretty big show, to imagine, just if nothing else, just for the main event, but I will run through the rest of the card and give a few thoughts here, try and be a bit more of a speedrunny one compared to the AEW WrestleDream stuff, because I'm not super plugged into, I'm more plugged into New Japan than Tony is, but that's not really saying much, but I'm not as plugged in as I used to be, so I'll probably be fumbling around a little bit more than necessarily would do if this had happened like 2 or 3 years ago, but hey ho, we persist. So we have opening up with Hiromu Takahashi versus Mystico. This should be super fun because Mystico's been doing great this year. He's like the biggest star in CMLL, and having him go against Hiromu Takahashi, who on his day is one of the best junior heavyweights in the world. So yeah, I don't really know who would win that one because I don't know the long-term ramifications of story coming off the back of it, but I'll just say Mystico wins because Mystico's great. Then we have the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles, Bullet Club War Dogs defending against the Intergalactic Jet Setters of Kevin Knight and Kushida. The Junior Heavyweight Tag titles are probably the most worthless titles in New Japan and potentially all of wrestling right now. I don't think that they necessarily need to be around, or they don't really add too much value or interest. I'll just go Bullet Club War Dogs retaining because I don't know. I obviously know the Intergalactic Jet Setters are a fun team, but I don't see them necessarily taking titles off the Bullet Club War Dogs right now, especially with the big crossover show coming up between Stardom and New Japan, where they've been building up like Clark Connors teaming up with Thekla against a team probably combining Natsupoi and someone else from New Japan, so I think that they'll continue to keep them looking strong. Then for the IWGP Tag Team titles, we have TMDK of Mikey Nichols and Shane Haste versus the Rogue Army of Bad Luck Fale and Caveman Ugg. Forgive me, I am not super familiar with Caveman Ugg. I believe that he is from the kind of like that whole New Zealandish or Australian group of like wrestling promotions where Bad Luck Fale has done a lot of his training work there. I can't get super excited at Bad Luck Fale having a match in 2024. I mean, he's what is he now? He's only 42, so younger than a lot of like top guys in WWE right now. But he has never been the most dynamic performer. He's very much just like a big man giant, which can get super over in New Japan. But I don't think that it's going to be a particularly exciting match. I'd say it's almost a guarantee that TMDK retain the titles. I don't think they're just going to put these titles on these two. Well, Bad Luck Fale's been in New Japan for quite a long time, but he hasn't been a consistent performer for them in terms of recent appearances, and I don't think they're just going to put their tag titles on a guy called Caveman Ugg. That's just maybe just me a bit too biased and harsh on him. We've got the Never Openweight Championship, Shingo Takagi versus Ryohei Oiwa. I am a big fan of Oiwa, based on the stuff that I've seen of him so far. I think they see him as like this young, up-and-coming star. I see him more as potentially a junior, but they might move him into the heavyweight side of things and putting him in a match with Takagi makes a lot of sense here to help showcase him. I think this is just a good way of like putting him up against a well-established name like Takagi to have a fun match, but to come short, like to just fall short. I definitely don't expect them to see him be crowned and then Openweight champion very much after Shingo just won it like a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I'd say Takagi retains, but it'll be a good showcase for Oiwa. 3-man match for the New Japan Pro Wrestling World Television Championship, Jeff Cobb versus Yota Tsuji versus Ren Narita. I believe this is the first time this title's been defended in something other than a one-on-one match. So I imagine it will still have the 15-minute time limit attached to it, but just have 3 guys involved. It's a bit odd. I'm surprised Ren Narita is back. I've assumed that he would be injured for a bit longer than he was, but it's good to see him just fighting fit again. The fact that it is a freeway, I don't know what the rules of a freeway are like in New Japan, whether there are count-outs or disqualifications, or whether they follow the same sort of pattern as the AEW things, where it's like essentially if triple threat fatal four-way, anything goes. If anything goes, then I imagine we're going to see I imagine whether anything goes or not, we're going to see a lot of House of Torture coming out for this. So that's probably going to make it less fun. And then you might see people from either United Empire or LIJ come out to try and even the odds in it, so it's probably going to end up with some sort of scramble on the outside before someone gets the victory. I imagine they'll have Jeff Cobb retain. I don't think they'll have him lose the title in a freeway. I think they'd rather wait until it's more of a one-on-one thing. Yota Tsuji's someone I could see winning that title, but I kind of would imagine Tsuji's ceiling was a bit higher than the World Television Championship. Not to try and degrade that championship too much, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's on the trajectory of a guy that's had, who only a couple of months ago was the finalist in the G1 Climax and has had multiple opportunities at the world title. It just feels like him just now fighting in a three-way match for the television title just feels like, that's a bit of a step down. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Shota Umino and El Phantasmo taking on the House of Torture. Evil, Yujiro Takahashi and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. This is probably going to suck, or it's probably not going to be particularly good because House of Torture matches typically do suck. They're certainly not my cup of tea. And there's nothing on the line. No titles, it's not the Never Openweight Championships, just a group of baby faces against a group of heels. And I'm going to go the House of Torture win because they're the actual collective, whereas Tanahashi, Umino and Phantasmo are just like kind of scattered pieces around the place right now on the babyface side. Dookie versus Sho for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Shout out to Tony, who, upon listening to this, just laughed at the word Dookie being said again. Again, Sho is another representative of the House of Torture, so there could be a ton of interference in this as well. Dookie's been, he's a decent name. Like, the fact that he's now finally getting some flowers with this IWGP Junior Heavyweight title run is good for him. I imagine he'll retain here, but again, I think that there's been so much kind of upheaval to try and push some of the other junior heavyweights outside of Takahashi and El Desperado that they might just end up switching titles around to try and, I guess, spread the wealth a little bit in terms of people that holding the titles to make them feel a bit more prestigious. But Sho's been IWGP Junior Champion fairly recently, so I imagine they'll just keep the title on Dookie for the time being. David Finlay defends the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship against Hiroki Goto. So David Finlay beat Goto's tag partner Yoshihashi in the title match a couple of weeks ago, so now Goto is the one that's stepping up. They did like a nice little renaissance story with Hiroki Goto recently, especially in the G1 Climax, where he kind of went on a little bit of a Cinderella run. Like a guy who's definitely in, he's not the twilight of his career just yet, but he's definitely closer to that than he was his prime. And he's more of a tag team guy these days anyway. But they might decide to do is this like the culmination of that Cinderella story to him come close, or to him to even get a shock victory over David Finlay and win this Global Heavyweight Championship? I highly doubt it. I think that, especially we're so close to Wrestle Kingdom, that I think that they'll just keep the title on David Finlay for now, and they'll have plans in mind about who he'll be defending the title against, either at Wrestle Kingdom or Wrestle Dynasty, whichever show that title ends up being defended on. So I imagine that Finlay will get a victory. They'll push Goto as like so heroic and getting just close and some really good near falls, but I imagine Finlay will get the victory. And then the match that's probably the only thing really worth talking about in the grand scheme of things about the show: Tetsuya Naito versus G1 Climax winner Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. So this is where this match is going to take place after Sabre Jr. said that he was going to issue his challenge here, because this is his favourite arena, the Ryokuku Kokugan, or Sumo Hall, however you want to refer to it. It's for him to challenge him rather than save it till Wrestle Kingdom. And so it'll be interesting to see how they decide to approach them and why they decide to make that change, and whether that is indicative of the fact they're going to have Naito retain the title in a bit more of a, a subtle lower grade venue than Wrestle Kingdom, and they have a bigger plan for Naito in store for Wrestle Kingdom, or whether it's a case of Zack's going to win the title because this is, especially in the venue in Japan that he's most fond of, and it's only a week or so before the Royal Quest show in the UK, and he gets to come into that show holding the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. I don't think it's any secret where I stand on this one, beyond the fact that Sabre Jr. is a fellow Brit and one of my favourite wrestlers in the world right now. That I obviously want to see him win the title. I want to see him win G1 Climax. I feel like this is where it has to happen. This is the culmination of it. He's been such a loyal servant to New Japan. He's never shown any signs of wavering or moving away before. So I think that his dedication to New Japan and being able to willing to live in Japan, learn the language, all this other stuff, should serve him in good stead to get the victory. I know Naito right now is their biggest star, their biggest draw, so having Naito lose the title and Zack going on to defend it, potentially Wrestle Kingdom in the future, is potentially a bit of a gamble in terms of the gate for Wrestle Kingdom. Like, I know that Zack Sabre Jr. is popular in Japan, but it's whether he doesn't carry the same cachet as a guy like Naito, who's been like an top level star and a big draw with the fans for so many years. So they take the gamble with that, but I think that it's just time for a change at the top, and I think that Zack Sabre Jr. is ready to lead New Japan as like a rare Gaijin world champion. Not as rare as it used to be, definitely in the last few years. I mean, you've had Kenny Omega, Jay White, Will Ospreay, but I think it's time, and John Moxley most recently as well. But I think it's time for another one to grab hold of the gold. So yeah, I'll definitely be watching this show, or at least that match at the very least, to hopefully see that moment take place, and I'll be utterly devastated and disappointed if Tetsuya Naito ends up retaining the gold. And with that, we're on to the final parts of our hot tags of the week. It goes relatively fast when there aren't multiple people talking. Maybe it's just going a bit of a speed run here. Hopefully you've been able to keep up with my rambling so far. I know I have kind of a tendency to speak quite quickly, so hopefully I've been able to rein myself in a little bit for every now and again. Probably the drink breaks have been helping with that as well. But let's talk about Monday Night Raw. And so I'll just open up the results so I know what happened. I know bits and pieces. I saw stuff on like Twitter and stuff like that. I know this was the first 2-hour edition of Raw for 12 years. So, they mix things up. From what I hear and what I've gathered from the show, I think that there were a bit of pacing issues regarding the switch to 2 hours, which I guess is somewhat understandable because it is just a different landscape they're dealing with now. But it does mean that I'm sure most fans are probably excited and happy about the fact that, it's only 2 hours. No weekly wrestling show should be 3 hours long. It's just too much. So going back to 2 hours is immediately exciting, but I think that it comes with some teething problems in terms of pacing, and you've been so used to 3 hours, and now you're trying to squeeze things in with that one less hour available to you. So they had CM Punk kick off the show, and he said that he's going away for a little while due to the injuries that he sustained in the Hell in a Cell match with Drew McIntyre. This is obviously the way to make sure that he doesn't have to end up sucking that blood money-covered dick at Saudi Arabia. And you had Seth Rollins come out and say, wishing him a speedy recovery, just so he can come back and retire him later on. Rollins is ready to call out Bronson Reed for a future match as well, so I'm sure that match will end up happening probably at Crown Jewel. That feels like a good time to do it. Then you had the Intercontinental title match. Jey Uso defeated Xavier Woods, as would be expected. And then you had Bron Breakker come out and spear everyone. So I guess the idea last week of him potentially turning babyface and moving towards Gunther has just been was either a red herring or has just been wiped out completely. So Breakker's now just going back after Jey Uso and the Intercontinental title, so a bit redundant there. You had other stuff, like a Viking Rune vignette, so I guess the Viking Raiders are coming back soon, which would be good to see after their both of their injuries recently. You had like some stuff going on. We've had Miz talking to Karrion Kross backstage, which is like two of the like least interesting people that you could probably put on TV together. And then it showed like a Wyatt Six message appear, so it's good to see that they've not been completely and utterly forgotten about after winning that match at American Mania. I think they've been off TV for about a month or so now, so it's just a case of that's really not flowing very consistently. Had the good old-fashioned Donnybrook match with Sheamus beating Pete Dunne with both his hands tied behind his back in handcuffs. So, yeah, not great for Pete Dunne in terms of his look, but, you know, Sheamus is Sheamus, so it's good to see him get a victory. You had, like, some segment between, like, Rhea Ripley and Donna Mysterio and Liv Morgan and all this other stuff. I think that, yeah, that's like, they're going to have the match with Liv Morgan and Nia Jax at Crown Jewel, so it'd be interesting to see how they continue trying to build that one up. You had Ethan Page was on the show, and Sexy Red and Trick Williams on the show as well. I had Trick Williams on the show, like Sexy Red was there, and like there was stuff about Page being upset about seeing Punk and all this other stuff, so maybe him losing his title was the way to push him up to the main roster, who knows really. You had a 10-woman tag. Laura Valkyria, Natalya, Zelina Vega, Kaden Carter, and Katana Chance defeated Pure Fusion Collective and Unholy Union. This is probably the biggest indication of the switch to 2 hours and condensing everything into one match. This felt very, very diva-coated. Just like throw 10 women together in a tag match and just deal with it there. It just, yeah, didn't feel very well-planned or have any sort of like real either structure or design to it of like, oh, this is here to get this person over or whatever. It was just a case of, you've got these people, let's just put them in a match. Why not? And AEW is supposedly the promotion that just puts matches on for the sake of matches. And then the main event, you had Gunther defeat Sami Zayn to retain his World Heavyweight Championship. Again, by all counts, very, very good match. Probably hindered quite a bit by commercial breaks. There were a lot of commercials that were just interrupting matches on this show, and so you probably only got to sort of see like about a quarter of an hour of the 20 to 30 minute long match. But apparently what you saw was good. I think it probably would have been better served on the pay-per-view where you got to see it in its entirety rather than this. You probably could have main evented this show, Damian Priest versus Finn Balor, and it wouldn't have been any sort of issue, but I digress with that. But yeah, Gunther retained as you'd expect. Forced Sami Zayn to pass out to the sleeper hold. So, I think that, yeah, I mean, that's what you expect. You're going to have Gunther versus Cody Rhodes for this Crown Jewel Championship in Saudi Arabia, so, which is the match you would expect to happen. So they're going to start building that up now. I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll see Sami Zayn fighting for the world title. I think he does have to win it eventually. But, yeah. Not an unexpected result. And then we'll finish this off with talking a bit about NXT. If I'm not super familiar with Raw, then God, how am I going to navigate my way through this one? But yeah, this was taking place on the same night. So obviously, you've seen or you may have seen the ratings discourse. I don't buy into that sort of stuff because it's just a load of numbers at the end of the day. It doesn't really mean anything. I'll say it doesn't mean anything, but like it's not the biggest deal that everyone makes out to be anyway. I'd rather talk about like these weird people about this weather stuff. Like, there's too many weirdos, not just in WWE but just in all wrestling. These people these conspiracy theories about people controlling the weather, and they're attacking the red states of the Republicans, and they're going after those people to make sure they don't vote, and they're trying to kill off people surreptitiously by making sure that hurricanes can appear. It was like Danny Palmer and Brooke Tessmarker have made comments about it. It's like, these people really need to like read a book or something, like actually like do proper research rather than listening to what the crazies are putting out on there, these conspiracy theorists. But anyway, let's move on to NXT. I digress on that. Sorry about that. Had to bring it up a little bit, but We had they decided to pack up the show. It had some pretty big like main roster star power on it. You had like Trick Williams come out to talk about being the new champion again, and Jey Uso came out and they talked about like their titles, and then you had Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill and Kalani Jordan all come out and hold up their titles. You had like 5 champions holding their titles in the ring. And again, it's like AEW is the one that has too many titles, and they just have 5 champions standing in the ring at one point, and it's like, oh no, I shouldn't be super critical. Like NXT does fine. You had like them, they defeat Fatal Influence as you'd expect. Good that they had like Kalani Jordan end up picking the victory, but I like Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair having them appear in NXT is like, you know, that adds a lot of star power to it. They also had like a encounter backstage with Lash Legend and Shakara Jackson. They're going to fight them for the tag team titles, so that's good to have NXT involvement. These tag titles should be defended on all 3 brands. That's what purpose was there for in the first place. So good to see that actually happening. Don't really put too much stock in Legend and Jackson winning, but you know, the match itself, that's what counts. Then you had Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez cut a promo, so they're seemingly aligning themselves back together again. And then you had Julia come out, and you also had the actual live debut of Stephanie Vaquer as well. They took out Jade and Perez, sent them running, and they both grabbed the titles at the same time. So I think we're very much heading towards either a tag. I think we'll first have the tag team match between them, where it's like 2-on-2 between the babyface and the heels, and then we'll probably have a 4-way match at the next big show for the title, and then we'll see how that ends up playing out. They also did a video vignette for Delta as well prior to on the show as well, so I think they're definitely doing well in like building up and stacking up their women's division again. I think that's very good, especially in the expectation that someone like Roxanne Perez will probably be moving up in the fairly near future. So being able to help replenish that with the likes of Julia and Vaquer and Delta will probably serve them well in the long term. And also the return of Nikita Lyons as well, who had a backstage encounter with Lola Vice, which is interesting because Lola Vice is a babyface, and you'd imagine that Nikita Lyons has only ever been a babyface in NXT, so that's kind of an interesting way to start things out between them. Then, probably one of the bigger stories of the night, Tony Angelo defeated Obafemi to become the North American champion. I don't think many people saw this one coming, but they have been doing this whole rocky underdog story with Tony D'Angelo, which I'm sure flew over CM Punk's head, but neither here nor there. But yeah, so then he just manages to stack up Obafemi with this roll-up. I like the fact that in the roll-up, he does like try and shift his weight and like push into Obafemi, so it looks like a bit more of a legitimate pin. And then, yeah, he just wins the title, and everyone, I guess, was shocked about it because Obafemi has been pushed so strong and has been such a powerful and, like popular force in the company in terms of, I know he's a heel, but like the crowd super gets behind him and just awes in his strength and presence. But, Tony D'Angelo's been a guy that's always been in and around, like, has been there for a while now, and has always been in and around the title scenes, and he's won the tag titles, and he's won the Heritage Cup, and now he's holding the North American titles. The only thing that's really left for him to check off before he go up to the main roster is to win the world title. But yeah, they've given him the belt here. I think that there's a very good chance that he drops it fairly soon to Obafemi or to someone else, because I think it's probably about time that he's the sort of guy that you could see moving up to the main roster at any point in time when they feel like they've got a space for him. But yeah, very surprising result in the grand scheme of things. I don't think, I doubt that many people would be putting money on that. You had the NXT Tag Team titles, which did not change hands, as Nathan Fraser and Axiom defeated A-Town Down Under. That was to probably be expected and probably the right result. I don't think that you want to have A-Town Down Under, who have been on just this terrible overall losing streak down in on the actual main roster. I don't think they were in the right place to beat Nathan Fraser and Axiom. They're very much main roster guys, and the long-term future you'd assume is to have Austin Theory beat Grayson Waller, or to at least like break up the upturn babyface, and that's their trajectory. So them winning the NXT tag titles doesn't really fit into that. You had the main event of the show. More Sexy Red and more Ethan Page stuff, so they're clearly just in a feud. The Sexy Red Ethan Page feud. Look forward to that, the next big show. But the main event was Randy Orton versus Javon Evans, which Randy Orton ended up winning with the RKO, but not the RKO that was probably intended to win the match. Because, and it's the sort of thing, like, a botch happens, and these things happen. Javon Evans went for a very flashy sort of dive out of the corner. It was meant to be caught with an RKO. Kind of, like, both sides kind of misplaced it a little bit, and he didn't connect with the RKO, so he had to just pick him back up and actually hit the RKO and get the victory. And Orton, rather than shout stupid, stupid, stupid over the top of him like he would do in the past, was a bit more just, like, general about it. Like, Javon Evans was, like, apologising for messing up the spot, and he was like, saying, it's okay, it's like, these things happen, and they do just happen, and people... And when they do happen, unfortunately, people just get on the back of it. It's a botch. It should just be a funny thing of like, oh, that didn't go to plan, that's quite funny, and then you just move on. But some people just have to use that to attack this guy and say things like, oh god, what is, like, these spot monkeys and stuff like that. And it's like, they're trying to do something cool, and when it comes off, it's great. But sometimes these things just don't happen. I don't think that should be discouraging for him. He's a young guy. He'll definitely learn from this, but hopefully it's the case of, like, hopefully he learns from it and thinks about other things in the future, about how he can maybe transition in the air or whatever, or how he lands for these sort of spots in future, but it doesn't discourage him from doing stuff like this in the future, because what John Evans can do is super cool. And, Randy Orton won, that was to be expected. Like, he gets to do it in front of his St. Louis crowd, and yeah. And he'll move back to the main roster and do all that stuff, because he's got stuff to deal with in terms of, like, the Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, like, backstage segment that happened. I don't think Tony really covered that, because obviously he was just doing the Hell in a Cell stuff, and that video emerged quite a bit after the Hell in a Cell show. But I thought that angle they did with Cody Rhodes being attacked by Kevin Owens, which was only kind of filmed by people on their cameras, whether they were plants or not, whichever way, they made it look super organic, and I thought that was a really, really well done angle. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they transition that, because obviously Cody's going to be facing Gunther at the next pay-per-view, so the stuff that happens with Kevin Owens is just going to have to be contained on SmackDown for the time being. So yeah, we'll follow that along when SmackDown's coming up later on today, so be sure to tune that in. Don't know what's necessarily going on. I don't think there's really much point in me letting you know, because by the time you're probably listening to this, it's probably long since happened, so won't bother wasting my breath too much with that. But I'm sure it was a show that happened. It was a show that happened on SmackDown, in wherever SmackDown is being held tonight. And then after the match between Randy Orton and Javon Evans, they announced that it's going to be Javon Evans, Ethan Page, and Wesley in a triple threat match for the next opportunity, the NXT World title. You would imagine that, unless they decide to just go straight back to Ethan Page for a rematch, that Wesley was probably going to win that match, so he can move towards the world title scene. I don't necessarily think he's going to beat Trick Williams, but, he's the freshest guy out of all of them in terms of opportunities. Like, Javon's been involved in the world title scene fairly recently. Ethan Page obviously was just the world champion, so Wesley is the freshest man from that perspective. I think pretty much I don't see anything else appearing. Yeah, there's nothing else that's super, like, newsworthy or exciting that needs to be discussed, so unless you're super excited about the fact that Gain is going to be facing Blue Pain at TNT Cold Day in Hell show, so, that if you're interested in that, then go check that out. I'm sure I'd rather watch that than modern day Glenn Jacobs do anything. So yeah, I think that will draw an end to the hot tags for this week and the AEW WrestleDream predictions. So the intention is to do a post show, but it will not be a live post show, as can be expected because of Tony's absence. He's the one that actually has the ability to do the live stream functionality over on, like, YouTube and other feeds. So I think what we're intending to do, in the hope that Rob gets power back within the next couple of days, is that me and him will come together on Sunday, have a bit of a chat about the AEW show, and put that up as like a non-live post show. We don't do that very often, but hopefully you tune in all the same. If Rob is still unavailable to record, or like the internet or electricity is still not working in his favour, then I'll just take the reins again for another solo show. So you might get another just me talking to the mic about how much I enjoyed, hopefully, WrestleDream, or how disappointed I was in some of the matches and all of that other great stuff. So yeah, make sure you'll be tuning in for hearing our opinions anyway, and I'll just round off with a few more plugs, or just a regurgitation of some of the plugs I mentioned before. So, as mentioned before, if you liked listening to this, if you enjoyed just me talking on the mic for the last hour and a half or so, then leave a like and drop a comment below. Let us know your thoughts on any of the stories or news or stuff been discussed. Leave your predictions for WrestleDream or for King of Pro Wrestling, or just any response to any of the news and TV stuff that we discussed, or I've discussed so far. Wish we could have discussed it. Would have definitely saved my voice a little bit. I'll be paying for that tomorrow. I need to crack open a pack of lozenges after this, but I'll get through these next couple of minutes anyway. So yeah, check all that stuff out. Obviously, mention the Patreon as well. Even anything as little as $1 a month just goes a long way to sort of like boosting morale, helping us feel a little bit more motivated to continue putting stuff out for it, even at times when we're not all available. There's not all hands on deck to do stuff. It still gives us a little bit of inspiration to carry on. So hopefully you can show support there, or become a member of the YouTube channel. Same way to do that, and it helps give you access to the additional content we have on offer. Like, even if you want to go all out to $50 a month, you can have the Pick Your Poison tier, where you can basically dictate what stuff we talk about in the near future. So keep all that in mind. Redbubble and TeePublic as well for just one-off merchandise purchases as well, if you want to check out this t-shirts and all the other stuff we have available there. Fanboys Anonymous, our sister site, you can check out that stuff for any sort of like, if you're interested in like the geek culture and comic books and movies and TV and that sort of stuff, you head on over there where Tony puts stuff out every now and again. And yeah, you can join us on the Discord, sign up for there, join us in the Mega Maniacs Facebook group. There's lots of ways you can like engage with us, interact with us. You can find me, personally, on Twitter at Wigmeister14. What you'll see from me on the Smark website, smarkmoment.com, is the power rankings every single Saturday. So this latest edition will talk about the fallout from Hell in a Cell and all stuff that's happened this past week. So be sure to see those results reflecting how people are stacking up in the rankings this week. Also, when you're over there, you can check out the Fantasy League at www.fantasyleague.com, or just navigate to it through the Smark website. So we're a little bit... So for those that didn't know, because obviously Tony wasn't aware of what happened, so Tony won the pay-per-view prediction contest. He got every result right, whereas me and Rob got a couple wrong. So he won, I came second, came third. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of predicated on him changing the teams. Like, he was the one that was supposed to dictate even who me and Rob had to eliminate from our team. So there's still a lot of stuff that's kind of up in the air. He's been busy, he's in Brazil, I don't want to disturb him too much. So I might message him a little while to see if he can get that stuff sorted out. So it's a little bit of a holding pattern, but we will get those changes made, and we will retroactively change a lot of that stuff off the back of it. So don't fear, Fantasy League's not on permanent hiatus or anything like that. It's just a little bit of a holding pattern right now, but we will get back to it as soon as we possibly can, especially with Crown Jewel coming up, which will be the next stopping point. And then, yeah, you can check that out over there, see how our teams are doing, who's picking up the most points after Hell in a Cell and all that other stuff. And yeah, so that will be it from my plugs. Obviously, check out the other guys as well that aren't available here, but want to make sure they get a shout out as well, because they do so much for this and help me out in the most part of things. So you can check out Tony Mango stuff like A Mango Tree in a lot of different places. Check out all the articles and writings he's got going on, heading over to like Fanboys Anonymous or eWrestling News or whatever to see the stuff that he's putting out. And then obviously at Dude Felice, and see Rob, his writings over on Fightful and all that other great stuff as well. So support those two guys. If you can, do have some spare change that you want to help support Rob with, just see the post he's put up about his Cash App to see if you can help out with some of the repair work inflicted on him by the hurricane stuff. So if you can help, that'd be great. And yeah, I think that is everything covered. So once again, hope you enjoyed this solo edition of the hot tags and WrestleDream predictions, and I will see you guys when I see you in the future. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and I'm being counted out.